Hello and welcome to Contractor Outlook from the coffee shops. My name is Heidi Ellsworth, and this podcast is about bringing information from outside the industry inside the industry. And we're talking about the construction industry. So we talk to experts on a regular basis who are sharing things on the economy, on weather, on politics. And today, so exciting, it's on weather. I am so happy to introduce and welcome Curtis McDonald from CoreLogic to Contractor Outlook. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to the discussion today.
You know, everyone wants to talk about the weather. It's just a given.
They do. It's one of the easy things to talk about, and certainly with what's been going on in the news headlines coming out of the spring season, a lot to talk about.
A lot to talk about, and we're heading into hurricane season, and
yes.
the predictions. So, kind of excited to hear some of your thoughts.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that as well.
So. Yeah. Well, let's start, Curtis. Let's start with some introductions. So, if you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about CoreLogic.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you mentioned, I'm with CoreLogic. I oversee our products for our weather space. So, product director. I do have a background in meteorology. I've been with CoreLogic a little over 13 years now. So I actually came into CoreLogic through an acquisition of a company called Weather Fusion, which we started out as livehailmap.com for anybody of those that have been maybe in the industry that long. Yeah, I know you do, but any of the roofing contractors that we work with over the years. So coming into CoreLogic, it was really quite the change going from a small startup into CoreLogic is a large organization. CoreLogic really is a leading company that provides property data and insights, and really the mission that we have is to get faster and smarter within the property ecosystem, and then also bring in the people, be more people-centric, and they certainly have a big component of that. So CoreLogic, that's really what excited me with CoreLogic was the amount of data that they have, and how we can really take that and it ties into our vision of, fueling a thriving global economy or global property ecosystem. And then ultimately, how do we build a more resilient society as we move further into time, as we'll talk a little bit about the changes in environment, changes in climate. But CoreLogic certainly does a lot. We partner with millions of real estate professionals, tens of thousands of financial institutions, thousands of different lenders and servicers. We work obviously for those in the insurance space. So we work with hundreds of insurance carriers as well as the federal government. So we provide quite a bit of data right into the federal government. Again, all around the property ecosystem, property characteristics, and we cover about 99.9% of all properties in the U.S. in terms of data components. So
that's huge. That is huge. And really, weather is affecting every one of those properties that you are working with and have information and data about. So, you know what? Let's start a little bit with some of that weather and what we're seeing with extreme weather. Pretty much all the time. What are you seeing so far, or some statistics that you can share for 2024? Because sometimes I think we all think it's extreme. It's just we're looking at it, but do the numbers really support that?
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly we'll talk about mostly the severe and convective storm season now that we're kind of out of the peak of the severe convective storm season, at least for a big chunk of the U.S. We still, as we go into later into June and through July, you start seeing more severe hail and tornadic events, maybe in the Colorado and further north in the northern plains. But looking at, certainly 2024 through May, so just was pulling some numbers or looking through some numbers. And when we look at the number of hail, tornado, and wind from a report perspective, like who's reporting, and then correcting those, essentially hail is 50% above the 10-year normal for 2024, the first half of 2024. And then even more concerning, or the tornadoes, 70% above the 10-year normal. We've seen just a tremendous amount of tornadic activity in many parts of the Midwest and then through the central and southern plains in 2024. And then 2023 also was very active from a hail perspective, significant hail perspective. So And then looking at, again, 24 this year, 50% above that 10-year norm. So certainly hail for 2023 and 2024, well above the 10-year averages. And certainly a big problem in the industry, not only, obviously in the construction industry, in the insurance industry. So looking forward to talking a little bit more about that. It's been really driven by, we've had below average anomalies for what we call upper level heights across the western U.S. And what that does, it introduces kind of the jet stream down across the central and southern plains that was kind of dominant through April and May. We also have very warm Atlantic sea surface temperatures, which are going to be, what we'll talk a little bit to on, we talk about hurricanes. But what that does is it provides the fuel, that moisture that we that needs for our thunderstorms need to produce these significant hail events, tornadic events. And the warmer the air is, the more moisture that can hold. The more moisture there is, the more fuel there is for these types of events. And so it's just been a really, really active, the southern plains, central plains. We're starting to see a little bit of a downtick in the severe weather, thankfully. And hopefully that'll remain that way through the rest of 24. But as you mentioned, we're coming into hurricane season.
Into hurricane season. So one of the questions I have, and I hear this a lot from contractors and from just people in general overall, they're like, well, it's a 100-year storm, or it's, I remember when the river froze over 100 years ago, so nothing's really changed. But it seems like when we look at the trends for at least even the last 20 years, really there has been this rise. I mean, when you say 50% for hail and 70% for tornadoes, that isn't just a little bit of an increase. That is extreme. So when you really look at the trends for the last 20 years, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of a tricky question. I mean, there certainly is, more and more reports of these events occurring, as more people have access to technology and cell phones to call in reports. Also, I think it's really important to understand over the last 20 years, the targets, cities, populations have continued to grow as well. So you kind of think of, it takes one storm hitting the right area to really cause a lot of problems. I think DFW, the Dallas-Fort Worth Metro, is a really good example of that. Over the last 20 years, there's just been a tremendous amount of growth on the north side of Dallas-Fort Worth. And for whatever reason, that Denton area down through the the north side of kind of the metro there, they typically do get significant, couple significant storms a year through that area, where 20 years ago, it was mostly open fields that were being impacted. Now it's packed with commercial properties and lots of residential properties. As well as, we don't want to we got to take into account, obviously, as I mentioned, sea surface temperatures, because that does drive a lot of different things, both from severe and convective storm perspective, rainfall, all the way, to the fuel for hurricanes as well. In 2023, we saw well above average sea surface temperatures across the Atlantic, and this year they are record setting. So the highest they've ever been for this time of year across the Atlantic, which, is certainly concerning. And hopefully this, we got to keep an eye on that trend, because we don't want the Atlantic to be continually to be provide record warmth, because again, it provides a lot of fuel for these different events. And certainly has a big impact on the outcome. So I think the combination of, as we continue to expand our urban sprawl, these targets are getting bigger and bigger, and then certainly the amount of events and the severity of events certainly has been an uptick, and it just kind of creates, I wouldn't say the perfect storm, but you're certainly going to have more events as you get bigger targets and have more significant storms.
I think it's really interesting talking about the increase in temperature in the Atlantic. And I don't know, we just came off in the Pacific Northwest and Northern California, huge amounts of snow, and weather that we haven't seen in quite a while. And then when you talked about Dallas, Texas, that really makes me think of what they've gone through with the ice storms down there that just seem to be so much larger, or maybe we just are seeing more in the media. I'm not sure which, but how much does the weather, year round kind of start influencing, or is that all that influence coming from, the warmer temperatures in the Atlantic and some of the changes with the jet stream?
Yeah, I mean it's and there's actually still a lot of research going on, and how the changes in our climate environment will have impacts. The two things that we really look at for at least hurricanes and severe and convective storms, and even to an aspect winter storms, is going to be the jet stream, which is essentially wind speeds aloft as you move off the ground, and then as well as the instability, which instability is how much cold air aloft comes over warm, moist air. So moisture has certainly a big impact on the instability. So those kind of contradict each other a little bit. So as we continue to warm and we warm the atmosphere, not only at the ground, but as we warm the atmosphere higher aloft above the ground, that could diminish the wind speeds, which is what's providing the kind of the shear that's needed for at least severe and convective storms. But then, as we get warmer and warmer, again, that moisture also plays into all types of extreme precipitation. So that's going to be one of the key things over the next, certainly as we head into later this year and the next year and beyond, is what's really happening with the sea surface temperatures, not only in the Atlantic, but globally. But for the U.S., we're really interested in what's going on in the Atlantic, because that has, and certainly the Gulf of Mexico, that has the most impact to the U.S.
And for the hurricanes as
yes,
they're coming through.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. So concerning this year, and again, we could have a record-setting hurricane year and no hurricanes hit the U.S., or,
right.
We don't have a record-setting year and it takes one or two hurricanes to cause
mass,
$50 billion in losses. It's like what we saw with Ian in 2022, I believe it was,
yes,
down in Florida. So,
yeah.
Attention roofing contractors. Are you ready to elevate your metal roofing game? Introducing Metal Talk, the live educational webinar series from metalcoffeeshop.com, designed exclusively for contractors in the metal roofing market. Stay ahead of the curve with insights from top industry professionals. Learn about the next great products that can transform your business and exceed your clients' expectations. From increasing your service offerings to delivering unparalleled quality, our Metal Talks equip you with the knowledge and tools to thrive in the competitive roofing market. Don't miss this opportunity to revolutionize your business. Register for the next Metal Talk now and become a leader in the world of metal roofing. Elevate your expertise and lead the metal industry with confidence when you tune into our Metal Talk series every third Thursday of the month at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. To register for the next Metal Talk, go to metalcoffeeshop.com/read-listen-watch. Metal Talk, where innovation and education meet in metal roofing.
So, looking at this, and the fact that you're watching the temperatures in the oceans and kind of how they're influencing the weather and what's happening, what are some of the things you're hearing yourself through your research and through other meteorologists looking at the next 5 years around weather trends?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that, and what we're already kind of we saw this year with the warm above normal temperatures in the Gulf as well as in the Atlantic. Again, that moisture. So there's more moisture available that's being transported by the winds. As winds come over the jet stream comes over the Rockies, it actually induces southerly flow at the surface. So as you get to the ground, and it brings that moisture up out of the Gulf of Mexico, both further north, what we're seeing, as well as further east. So as we head into really the next several years, again, really keeping an eye on the temperatures in the Gulf and how much of that does have impacts to, the severe weather season spreading further north and east, kind of out of your traditional tornado alley, if you will, in the central and southern plains. So certainly looking at areas across like Minnesota, Wisconsin, and parts of even the Northeast or Mid-Atlantic, likely we'll see, thinking we'll see an uptick in general to not only the number of events, but maybe the number of more significant events. The storms that producing 2-inch and greater hailfall or more significant tornadoes. Things that people aren't really used to a lot of times out there, at least in widespread nature. Not saying that's necessarily going to happen, but that is something that we're certainly want to watch out for, as well as the Front Range of the Rockies. So that moisture is actually being able to get really close to the Rockies. You kind of think of it. The moisture is it's a fluid. It's fluid dynamics. So you can think of it as kind of butting up against the Rocky Mountains. So as those waves come over and the energy, the lift sparks those thunderstorms, there's more moisture, more energy. They can get stronger and produce the larger hail. So we've kind of seen that in the Front Range of the Rockies over certainly the last 3 to 5 years. There's been some pretty significant events across Colorado Springs northward into the Denver metro and north side of the Denver metro.
And they've been seeing it this spring and last. I know the contractors there are very busy trying to get everything fixed up after that. So, okay, when we're looking at the severe hail, what are you seeing and how are you tracking events with the CoreLogic reactor insights and forensic data? I think contractors are interested in, the fact that you're a meteorologist, that you are working on this every day to kind of track that. How does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. So CoreLogic has and continues to really invest very heavily into our post-event weather data. So that includes currently our tornado model, our wind model, as well as our forensic hail model. So what we do is we've come up with a pretty unique way of overcoming the limitations of the data sets that we have available to us. So, for example, the National Weather Service owns and operates a series of weather radars across the U.S. Well, when it comes to hail and even tornado and wind, one of the biggest limitations to the weather radars, there's only so many of them. So as you move away in distance from those weather radars, due to the curvature of the Earth, the beam or where the radar sees is further and further up off the ground. So just because the radar sees, maybe some high reflectivity, which could represent some hail, doesn't mean that that's going to fall straight to the ground. So in order to overcome those limitations, we have really come up with a unique solution and built a really robust backend tool that brings in just a tremendous amount of data. And these data includes, any really ground observation we can get our hands on. So that would be coming in from the National Weather Service or the Storm Prediction Center, or maybe coming in from news outlets or social media. We also partner with many others to get some data. And what that does, each one of those reports are quality controlled. We have a team of meteorologists. I'm not the only meteorologist at CoreLogic. So we have a really great team of forensic meteorologists, and they essentially almost 24/7 now, they work around the clock and they review every single one of those reports. And what those reports do, they can actually flag out reports that maybe they don't have enough confidence in, like the hail size or the location. Or sometimes, day and age, it's really easy to report fake stuff, and we just have to flag that or remove that from our algorithm. So we leverage those quality controlled ground observations to overcome the limitations of the weather radar, and then we leverage the weather radar to overcome the limitations of those ground observations. And as we continue to expand that model out, we're actually getting ready to release a new forensic hail model that's coming up in August. That's something that we've been working on for almost 2 years. Really excited about. So we'll be making releasing some information into the market here pretty quickly. But yeah, really excited about what the team's been able to accomplish in terms of accuracy. Is anything out there 100% perfect? No. But in terms of the approach that we've taken, things that we've developed and what we've validated, we are getting a lot of traction with the carriers as well as contractors and just the quality of the data. So that's just a little at a high level. There's a lot to the models. It's pretty complex, but we do have a series of PhD meteorologists as well that actually build and work on those core models for hail, wind, and tornado.
When you think about that, those models are so important, even, really for the relationship between the contractor and the insurance company too, because, for the home and the end user, obviously the insured, to be able to have accurate reports and be able to really put their claims in a way that is fast and easy. And the weather really changes, can cause all kinds of problems. And sometimes people don't realize that it was a huge storm, to your point. So, I mean, that new software sounds incredible.
Yeah, I think it's all about preparedness and then response. So there's certainly things that that the construction industry can continue to do, and what has been doing, which is enforce and build better quality and be more resilient to these types of events. And I think that'll continue and should continue for certain. And then CoreLogic is certainly playing part in all of that, trying to bridge the gap, if you will, between the construction industry, the lending, mortgage industry, the servicing industry, as well as the insurance industry, because we are playing in all of those spaces, and we do have again those data sets that really in a lot of ways complement each other and can create some pretty incredible solutions in the space.
Yeah. So when you're kind of looking at what's happening right now with the insurance companies and construction and extreme weather, what are some of the trends you're seeing that way, that contractors should be aware of, that things may be changing or not? It's kind of because with this many extreme storms, it just seems like at some point things are going to have to change a little bit.
Absolutely, and they are changing. Last year, I think was the year that really I won't say the straw that broke the camel's back, but a lot of carriers suffered last year, and in fact became solvent, including my carrier personally.
Wow.
I'm in Oklahoma City, so I'm right in the heart of the severe and convective storm area, if you will. And one of the things is we're getting so close with the continued rise in premiums, as rising deductibles. I'm getting very close to self-insuring my roof. So there has been talks with some carriers, is there an avenue where we don't insure roofs any longer, and we start offering a supplemental policy for roof cover. As well as I think you're going to see the industry have to really continue to adopt the technology and get more efficient in terms of how they respond on the insurance side, and also classify these events to the right states of losses. So I think the carriers are going to start, really trying to get more accurate in terms of the dates of loss that are being reported, specifically for hail. Hail's a challenging one, because that's one of those perils that certainly the damage can go undetected for quite some time, or a lot of homeowners that maybe are outside of the common areas that receive these damaging hail, they're not even aware that hail can cause damage to your roof.
Right.
So again, having that data, having the products and solutions that tie into workflows and automation, I think are going to be really key over the coming years. And that's again where CoreLogic is really focused at, is kind of again bridging that gap, leveraging the data and exhaust data that comes out of different solutions and products that we have, let's say on our real estate and mortgage side of the house, and how that can be fed into on our insurance sides. Like example would be we collect almost every property that gets listed on the MLS, or a large percentage of those, we get access to those photos. So we not only have imagery outside the home, but we also have imagery inside the home. So
Wow.
What that means is we can get better and faster at understanding what the potential losses could be after an event. To your point, to try to prevent some of these surprises. It's pretty shocking to me, and I talk. It's kind of across the construction industry, the adjusting industry, insurance industry. When we have some of these disasters, or when a big catastrophe occurs, it's still kind of chaos for everybody.
Yeah.
And I really don't understand why that's still happening. I mean, I do, but there's definitely things that I've seen a lot of companies continue to make strides moving forward. I think that has to happen. We have to get smarter. We have to get faster, and we got to be can't be surprised anymore. These events we've had a lot of them. We've had enough of them, but they're not going to go away.
No, they're not going to go away. And that kind of brings me back around where I really wanted to. We are heading into hurricane season, and then end of summer we are in wildfire season. I'm in the western states. Wildfires have become so much more predominant in these areas. So one of the things that you said was preparedness, for the contractors to have the right technologies, to have the right processes in place, and also for homeowners to do the right things with their properties. Basically saying, I want a resilient home. I want a home that will survive 130-mile-per-hour winds, or that will be more likely to survive flying embers. What are some of the things that you're hearing on that front from, I'm going to say basically from the insurance companies, of them starting to demand that kind of proactiveness from both the homeowners, the insured, and also the contractors who are building their buildings?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I mean, there's a lot that CoreLogic again kind of plays in this area. Starting with the insurance side, we do have a whole series of deterministic models, and what I mean by that is like looking at what is the probability or likelihood of an event occurring, over the next 5 years. So those would be like our risk scores, and those are going to be typically used for the underwriters within the carrier. And we've released some new things recently, like for an example would be our wildfire resilience score. So we're actually looking at properties and properties that, the homeowners are taking, more protective action in wildfire prone areas, not having cedar shake roofs, or removing brush away from your property, not having, all these cedars right up against your property. Those scores are, help with ultimately, looking to help drive the premiums down for those customers they're taking that extra effort. So we do have a whole series of different resources, and specifically for contractors, I would recommend we have each year, if there's an interest in the severe and convective storm side of things, we put out a really good report called our severe and convective storm report. It kind of goes through and gives a recap of the prior year, where the events were, also looks at some of the higher risk prone areas. We also do that for hurricane. So we have a hurricane risk report that we put out. And then finally, we have a whole website that's dedicated to kind of disaster and catastrophes. We'll summarize the events. We'll give property counts. We'll give some information on, how many residential, how many commercial properties were impacted, and a lot of really good information. And that's our Hazard HQ website from CoreLogic. So, and then, of course, the products that I support, we do a lot, again, in the insurance and contractor space, whether it's Insight, again, just being able to monitor the weather, understand what customers or maybe past customers for a contractor that are likely going to be impacted or has just been impacted, that they can be more proactive and provide maybe some of those emergency services to those customers that they had done prior business with. All of that with hopes of, further mitigating any further damages to that property. So in essence, there's a lot there, but, we do have the resources and more than happy to provide any information out. But I think the good starting point would be with our Hazard HQ site. I think that's before an events happen, and then after events happen, we put out a lot of really good information.
I've been there. It's a great site.
Okay.
Great information.
Good.
Yes. Yes. I love it. So, you mentioned earlier on, but just one more time, a little bit of forecasting. And I know every year there are reports that come out on, kind of forecasting the hurricane season and what's going to happen. Any thoughts on, I know you said it's going to be larger, but any other information around the hurricane season coming up that we're walking into? Or I guess we're already started, haven't we?
We're in there. I mean, we had Alberto, first tropical storm Alberto, in this last couple of days that came in, made landfall south of Texas, but there was a lot of rain through South Texas. The good thing was it did bring a lot of rain, but there was also some spin ups or some tornadoes that were caused from that tropical storm. But yeah, I think the things that we're watching, the main one is going to be those sea surface temperatures. There is a tremendous amount of energy and fuel for these storms to take and use, as well as we're moving out of, we were in El Nino, and we're moving into La Nina. So that certainly can have an impact on the number of events or number of tropical events that form in the Atlantic. So certainly, I think, just given the, where we're at, we will have an above average season for sure. And more likely, probably more significant hurricanes. Again, that's not saying that everyone's going to hit the U.S. That's not going to be the case.
Right.
Hopefully, none make landfall. But again, it just takes that one storm, to make landfall on the heavier populated areas could really cause a lot of problems and drive up a significant loss.
And just for all of those out there, because I hear this all the time, El Nino, La Nina, transition in between, moving into a La Nina, and hopefully I'm saying that right. What does that look like? Wetter, colder? What's kind of the feel of that?
Yeah, it depends on, and what drives that is going to be actually out in the Pacific, towards the equatorial Pacific down, and it's upwelling and caused by different shifting of winds. But you'll have warming waters that will be seen at the surface for El Nino, and then actually upwelling and bringing up cooler waters when we're in La Nina. And that actually does have impacts on driving the jet stream across the U.S. So you can certainly have varying different impacts between El Nino and La Nina. One of the big ones for severe convective storms is going to be in El Nino. We typically see more severe storms, more significant hail, tornadic events in parts of the central and southern plains, which we certainly saw this year. Right. And then with La Nina, we typically do see severe convective storms increase across parts of the Mid-South, so Arkansas into Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, maybe over into Georgia. So we'll have to keep an eye on, as we go kind of transition from an El Nino now going into neutral, and then we're slowly going into a La Nina. How long will that continue? Will that continue into, next storm season from a severe convective storm front? And then also, obviously, could have some impacts, but probably a little less on the hurricane season, just because we're getting closer to more neutral right now. Okay. But we'll have to, again, really keep an eye on, could have impacts on winter weather as well. So I know you're in the Northwest. So
and we are very affected by it.
Yeah, more La Nina trends, I think, the more wet and snowy conditions across the Northwest.
Yes. Which we've been having even in El Nino. So it's kind of.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the thing, that's just in general, but, things nowadays, again, it takes one storm or one event to really, change the perception on people in terms of how a weather event can, impact them, certainly in the future.
Yeah, their lives. And it does. Curtis, thank you. This has been so informational. I love talking about the weather, and I love the fact hazardhq, right? .com. Great resources for people to reach out and get more information. So thank you so much for your insights and your wisdom, and we'll have to have you back again.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime. Thanks for inviting me and having me. It's been great. I can talk for an hour on weather with one breath, I think. So
I love it.
Maybe one day we'll get you out and we can storm chase and see some tornadoes.
I'm from the Pacific Northwest. We're scared of tornadoes. Give us a good snowstorm and we're just fine. No, thank you. I would love to do that. And I would love to see and everything that you're doing for the industry and all the great information that's helping so many consumers and contractors. So appreciate it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you all for listening to this Contractor Outlook from the coffee shops. This is an ongoing podcast. It will be coming out the first Wednesday of every month. And we're talking to the experts. We're bringing experts from the outside the industry inside to talk to you and help give you the information you need for your business to grow throughout all trades in construction. My name is Heidi Ellsworth. Thank you so much. And we will be seeing you next time on Contractor Outlook.
Thanks for tuning in to the Coffee Shop's Contractor Outlook Newscast. Learn more at thecoffeeshops.online and subscribe to get notified when the next episode launches on the first Wednesday of every month.